Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Ask the Trainer. And I'm here with Chad. Hey, Chad, how are you doing?
Woo! Good, Jonas. How you doing, buddy?
I'm also good. Thank you. So today, it's a little bit special because Noseman unfortunately wasn't able to come. Maybe he will come later. But hey, it's Chad and me, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun. And I want to start with the housekeeping. So I'm going to share my screen and give me a second. Here we go. And yeah, so here I am on the Maxon events page. And let me also share this link here. So this is the link to the Maxon events page. And on here, you can find all the events that we are planning. It's both live events as well as live streams, live events being like in-person events. And you can find that page when you are on the Maxon website and you go to news and then events. All right, the next one that I want to share is the Maxon YouTube, the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel. So let me quickly go here. You're probably already on it, but just in case you're watching from another channel, this is the link, and this is also where we are storing all the recordings of our sessions so that you can, rewatch them, catch up, and so on. All right, then another thing which is also a great learning resource is Cineversity. If you go to Learn on the Maxon website and then Cineversity, then you will come to this page, and here you can find all sorts of getting started series and a lot more. So this is definitely worth checking out. Let me share the link quickly. Here we go. And yeah, then last but not least, I already want to tell you that we want to give away free t-shirts. So there is a merch store and a coupon code. And I'm going to paste both the URL and the coupon code in the chat as well. So you can visit the merch store, you type in the coupon code, then you are allowed to pick one t-shirt and you will get that t-shirt for free, and you only have to pay for the shipping. And that's pretty much it. So during the last week, a few things happened. We had like a very small release of stuff, and some things have been added to our products. So what I want to mention first is that Redshift is now available for the latest version of Maya on Windows machines. Also, the new Redshift camera and backplates are now available in Redshift for 3ds Max. Inside of Cinema 4D, when you switch to Redshift, I already did that, we now also have a material preset here for the principled hair shader. And yeah, Redshift CPU is now faster and definitely needing significantly less memory. So the memory requirements are way lower. And then I already actually want to hand over to Chad because there is some very exciting new thing to real lens flares. And if we can swap over to Chad.
Wait for it. It's a dramatic reveal here. There's my screen. So I'm actually here in Premiere, and Real Lens Flares is now in Premiere, which is really cool. And for those of you that aren't aware of Real Lens Flares, it is a lens flare plugin. But you might say, okay, well, I've seen lens flares before. But in case you're not familiar with Real Lens Flares, it's a different beast. All other lens flare tools, including our previous tools like No Light Factory or whatever, they create lens flares with like fakery, like they're using like sprites and different things like that to kind of like simulate, like imagine, kind of like approximate what a lens flare would be like. But this is an actual simulation. So as I'm like moving the light source around here, these lens elements are distorting and changing shape and size and everything as if they were going through a lens. I can click the Open Designer button and wait for the designer to open. Jonas, I'm like just like going into Real Lens Flares. Is that okay? We didn't talk about this, but I'm just like taking a sweet time.
I mean,
okay. Just a couple more minutes on like what Real Lens Flares is, because I'm pretty excited about it. So when I'm
excited about it too.
Right? It's a pretty cool thing, especially if you're into cinematography at all, or if you're like background in digital cinematography, but you're looking to kind of like up your game. There's just nothing else like this out there. There's no other lens flare simulation tools out there. You know, we've been focusing a lot on simulations in cinema, and like that's just kind of like a big focus for us. And so it's now here in Premiere. There's a simulation, which is pretty cool. So I could go down to lens
even just the window that you have up there is already like always a pleasure to my eye because it has this lens down there, and you can really adjust all parts of these lenses. I don't want to interrupt you explaining it because you're as excited as I am. Sorry for interrupting.
Interrupt all the time. It's fantastic. But yeah, it is super nerdy. I mean, you could see the lens simulation here, and we have this light source being simulated. We have the sensor being simulated over here. The aperture is simulated right here. We can actually select every little piece of glass in this lens and tweak it. Like we can tweak its like front AR coating, like the anti-reflective coating, if we want to. For each one of these pieces, we can click on the light source and change it. We click on the sensor and tweak the sensor size and all of that. We could actually go into different lenses, and there's actually lens simulations. So if we want to simulate, you know, a Canon 18-55 at 35 millimeters, like this, we could click on this, and we're going to get all of the lens components for that exact lens, which is incredible. We have anamorphic lenses. We also have some like a thing called Schmutz. So it's like simulates dirt on the lens. So I can click this little like element here. These are the ingredients in this particular lens preset. And right now it's using the dust texture on the lens. And so then the light is being like filtered through this schmutz, we call it, this dirt on the lens. So as I move my lens flare, this is too warm for this scene, but you can see that it's just kind of like illuminating the dirt the same way it would on the lens, which is something that you really can't simulate otherwise. It's really difficult to simulate otherwise. And we could, you know, defocus the schmutz, and we have all these other options for the schmutz. And we can go and build our own lens flares here by clicking on lens flares, all these kind of, you know, halos and you know, glow balls and all these different like lens components that we can add to build our own flare if we want to. One of my favorite things here, if I just click on like one of these presets here, maybe like the Leica 35, I think. If I go over to the lens thing here, the f-stop, this is one of my favorite things in the world. You could see the shape of the little lens element. If I stop down by increasing the f-stop, you can see that it's also stopping down the components of the light. This is exactly what would happen on a flare in real life. It would get tinier. And also it would get more octagonal if there's an octagonal aperture, or whatever the shape of the aperture is, you're going to see that a little bit more. And then as you open up the aperture, it becomes more round as the aperture gets wider open, and you can see that reflected in these lens elements. So all over the place, this is great. And Real Lens Flares has been out for a bit, but only in After Effects, and now it's in Premiere, so I can add this magic to my timeline right here in Premiere, which is really incredible. And I could scan this. You could see it's like working on my footage. And there you have it. So Real Lens Flares now in Adobe Premiere in the editing timeline. Boom.
Boom, indeed. It's that's a super, super cool thing. And, as someone like having German as the first language, it's always funny because Schmutz is actually the German word for dirt.
Awesome.
So, and I always love how it's pronounced in other languages. So that's a really cool thing. So
what's the right way to pronounce it?
Well, it is Schmutz, but
Okay.
yeah, as a native English speaker, it's always more like Schmutz, something like that. It's just a tiny little difference, but
Okay.
I love it. So we had one question here that I like by Derek. Where is this in Premiere Pro? Can you please show that again? Where?
Yeah, so you could find it the same way you find like all effects in the effects panel. So I think you could dial into video effects and then go into RGB effects, and it's here along with a few other VFX collection, like that suite of tools. Chromatic displacement, optical glow, and Primac Keyer 6 are in there as well. But the easiest way to do this is just by going here and then just like searching for it. And there you go, Real Lens Flares. Real Lens Flares in the effects panel doing the search. So same place you have all the other effects. Good question. Sorry I didn't mention that. I just came preloaded with it already applied, and that was maybe not good training etiquette of me. I should have applied it in the first place. So, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes we're just so excited about stuff that that we forget to show how to apply.
Yes. Thank you for that question, Derek. That's good.
Yeah, really good question. And talking of questions, you can ask your questions. Feel free to ask your questions. We love to have like a capitalized Q or question as a prefix for the question. And we already got a few. And I wanted to bring up this one by Bhavana. And Bhavana wrote, yeah, I'd like to shape or art direct the traced lines created by an emitter using guide spline specifically, like a network array or following a circle around. So I'm not really sure what you mean by the network array, but actually what you want to do is you want to shape splines using a guide spline, right? That's how I understand it. And let's just give it a try. I would try to use a spline deformer here. Let me quickly
switch back over to Jonas's screen, because I think this is a Jonas answer. There you go.
Okay, so here we have it. So I'm just going to go to simulate and add an emitter. And I'm just gonna create a few particles here and maybe extend or bring up the speed a little bit. So let's just put this to 500 or so that we get a few streaks or like faster particles. To get the streaks, we throw this into a tracer. So I'm going, that's an interesting one. Never had that before. So this is the tracer here. Oh, that's interesting. Tracer. Maybe let me restart after this, and then we see what's happening. Is that happening with the others as well? Really interesting. Right. So, the tracer is now tracing the emitter, and now it's tracing the lines. And what I would try now is to, so is this going to be procedural or not? So in this case, it is procedural. But what I want to try is I want to go to the side view and maybe just add another spline here. So let me just do something like this. Using snapping would also be a little bit better in this case. And then I would try to use the Spline Deformer. Let me see. There are also a few things where this happens. So I'm going to use this one. Is it this one or is it this one? Let's try. No, it's not this one. Okay. So let me see. Okay, I have to restart in a second. So let's use this one. And this is the Spline Wrap Deformer. So I'm going to make it a child of the tracer. And then I'm going to use this spline here. Wait, the first thing is we need to define the axis. That would make sense. It's going to be plus Z. And I'm going to just throw this spline in here. And you can see that something happened already. And now, in theory, it should be possible to select this part of the spline here, for example, and then move all the others up. Yeah, you can use a rail spline as well. You can also maybe set this one to uniform. Then this would avoid oh, it wouldn't avoid the flipping. But what you can do to avoid the flipping, especially when you have a situation like here, is you could create a copy of this one, or even better, an instance. So let's go in here and let's just grab an instance of that spline and just offset it a tiny little bit. So let me just show that to you. So we have the original spline here, and here is the instance. And I can use this instance as a rail spline. So let me go to the spline wrap and let me just put that in here. And okay, that's also interesting. Let me see. Let me see if it flips. Still flipping. Okay, so in this case, this doesn't seem to work. Usually with geometry, that works quite well. So we're grabbing that spline here. We're using it as a rail spline. Okay, maybe let me try just making it editable. No. All right. So yeah, with geometry, this would definitely be the way that I would try. In this case, we have something is happening in here. There is some flipping going on. All right. So anyhow, do you have something else to show, Chad, that you can improvise on? Because then I could restart my cinema here. And
I don't have anything to show on the. I could talk more about real lens flares, but I feel like you're the wizard of what's going on here. I'm really blown away that you can just be like, oh, I'll just take this like super advanced question and just like riff on it and make a bunch of stuff out of nothing. It's incredible.
So yeah, I got it.
Amount of knowledge that you have.
Okay, for some reason.
You're already up and running before I could even finish.
Yeah, everything is back. Whew. I don't know why that happened. So yeah, let's see if we have some other questions here. All right. Okay, so while you, the audience, prepare a few questions, I want to bring up another one, another comment that came up. So we published a quick tip today, and maybe I can show what I did there. So the quick tip was about adding assets from the asset browser or from the commander to the palettes. And there's a little trick that you can just do to add them as a group. So what you can do, for example, is you can search for something. Like in this case, I'm going to search for a table, all right? And then when I just want to like add a few tables, let me just add these two here, and just add them to the menu or to the palette here. You can see that these are being added as two separate icons and two separate buttons. But what you can do also is you can, for example, choose multiple of these, and then you just hold down the Shift key and do the very same thing, and then it will just add these assets as a group. And now you have a menu here, and you can do the same thing from the commander. So if you use Shift C, then you can search for, let's say, gold or so. What do we have with gold? So let's just use these and just add them here as well. And now we have a few materials that we can just create from here. This is super useful, and that was the quick tip of today. Just repeat it live with all the M's and R's that I typically cut out when I finish the quick tip. So
your quick tips are so amazing, by the way. Like,
oh, thank you.
Your quick tips are just like ridiculous. If you're in the audience, and you haven't checked out Jonas's quick tips, they're absolutely incredible. They're super, super short, and you pack so much information into those little tips. They're always just astounding.
Oh, thank you. I'm not alone on these anymore. Darren and Noseman are helping me now with quick tips, which is amazing. So yeah, one thing that I forgot to mention actually is we directly just jumped into questions, but since I have the asset browser open, we have new content in there also. So one thing that you might have seen is when you go to materials, there are more plastic materials, also again created by Munich-based studio Fuchs and Vogel, and they are doing a lot of architectural visualization and so on. They are like professionals on photorealism, and they are creating these super good materials for us. Like all of these materials are created by them. So if you're watching it, thank you. And the next thing that I wanted to show is here in new content. You can see there are a lot of plants. So we now have a few, let's say 52 plants from Laubwerk in here. And you can simply search for them by typing in Laubwerk, and then you will get all the plants that are made by these guys. And the cool thing here is that whenever you double click something, first of all, it's all Redshift ready. So let me double check that I'm in Redshift. I'm going to switch the renderer to Redshift, and let me just add this bush here. So the great thing about this is that it's coming in an LOD object. If you never used the LOD object, you can find it in here. Here's the LOD object. And the great thing about that is that you can work with a proxy, for example, in the viewport. And then when you hit render or start the IPR, it will replace the model with the high definition model. So, but we can also switch between these here. So down here, you have the LOD mode. In this case, I'm using the children here as the levels of detail. So we're starting with the lowest detail down here and going up to the full detail here. And then you can choose a criteria. Right now, it's set to user LOD level. That means that I as the user or you as the user have to switch between the levels. And this is for the viewport. So here I can switch to level 0, which is the full model. And now if I zoom in, wait, here we go. You can see that there is a lot of detail in here. So you can go really close even and create shots, that are just closer, as I said. Right, so let's make this look a little bit more beautiful, maybe with the dome light. So now you can see that, yeah, it's great. The cool thing is that in here, let's have a look at the at this material here for the flowers. There is even subsurface scattering in there, so you can see that this is linked up. If I go to subsurface, you can see this is working. It's all really, really cool. All right, so let me go back to this level here, because yeah, when I create more of these, then probably this would slow down my computer when it's too many. So I could go and add a cloner, and I'm going to hold down the Alt key while I do that. I'm having the LOD selected, and then I can just create the cloner like so, and it will create the cloner as a parent object and therefore clone all of these objects immediately. So when I send this to Redshift, maybe let's make this a little bit bigger. Let's go with let's say 10 by 10 or so. Maybe 10 by 10 is too much for what I want to show you, because when you start the IPR now or start the rendering now, these are full clones. So we are right now in the phase of extracting geometry, and this is going to take a while, because right now it's putting all of these plants here onto the GPU, and yeah, this can take a while because it's so many plants. So we're getting there. At least I think we're getting there. Preparing first level of ray tracing hierarchy. So you can see this is taking a while, progressive rendering. So the time to first pixel was really long now. And there's a simple trick how you can make this faster. Let me quickly see. Maybe let me just stop the rendering. And let me see if this also works already. If I just set the instance mode here to multi-instance and maybe refresh completely. Progressive rendering, yeah, that's much faster. The other way how you could do it, which is even more Redshift optimized, is that you swap the cloner with the matrix and then use the matrix scatter to scatter the geometry onto like other objects, or distribute it the way that you defined here in the cloner. And the way you can do that, many people don't know that, but there is actually a simple way to just swap a cloner by a matrix object. And this is here in the MoGraph menu. There's a swap cloner matrix command. It's not new. It's been there for, well, I think we added it in, was it release 18 or 19 or so? So let's just swap that. And now it's a matrix with the exact same settings, and even all the effectors would be still applied if we had some. And if we want to render this, nothing is there, because it doesn't know that it needs to pick the this geometry here to populate these matrices, with the geometry. So let me
Jonas, I got a quick question.
Yes.
Where is that matrix object stored? Because it looked like all that's going on is that the tree is turned off, but I don't see the matrix object anywhere, like on a tag or.
So this is the matrix object now, and the icon changed.
Okay.
If I swap it back, let's swap it again. So now you can see that the icon changed. The name is still the same.
Okay.
Maybe that was a little bit confusing because it's still the default name. my distribution. Let's just rename it. Maybe now it makes more sense. And let's just swap the cloner with the matrix, and now it's just a matrix. Matrices are super fast to calculate because a matrix is basically just a position in 3D space with rotation and scale values. Actually, it's the vectors of the axes, but we can translate that to rotations and scales. And what we can do now is we can right-click, and then we go to Render Tags and add the Redshift Object tag. And then in the Redshift Object tag, there is a tab called Particles. And in here, we can set the particles to be custom objects. And now we could just drag and drop the matrix, the LOD in here, like the bush. And let me just, yeah, that should work. Let me start the IPR and see if I have to, yeah, I have to unsolo this or make this visible again, I mean. And now you can see that the trees or bushes are being rendered quite fast. So the time to first pixel is much faster because what happens technically is that it just has to bring over the geometry of one of these plants to the GPU, and then it will distribute on the GPU. This is much faster. So whenever you have to clone a lot, so now I could without any problem like go to let's just go to 20 by 50 or so, just adding a lot of these, and it just works, and it's super fast. It's super responsive. If I did that with the initial mode that I chose, or that it's the default, then we would wait for a few minutes here now, and still I can add effectors here. So let's just add a random effector. Now it's a little bit randomized. Let's just randomize the position a little bit, but also randomize the scale, make it uniform, and something like this. And then we have bigger plans, smaller plans. Maybe that was too much, but yeah, something like that, and a little bit of rotation, like so. So now it's way more randomized. So let me quickly check the chat if there are more questions.
Yeah, there's a question from Peaceful Man about using Redshift Alembic procedurals, which are recently added to Redshift. I'm not sure what an Alembic procedural is. You'll have to fill me in on that, what that is.
I have to admit that I don't know exactly as well. I've never Alembic procedurals. So I cannot answer the question. Sorry. Let's have a look at the next one.
Anisotropic textures, like radial or pattern in Redshift. What's the next question?
That's also a good question. And what I would do here, so this is the question. What I would do here is I would try to use like a very fine, detailed noise or something, and then or a texture even. So I would, first of all, I would try to fake it if it's possible. So if you have a product visualization, let's say a stereo with a knob to adjust the volume, for example, I would, for visualization purposes, I would try to fake that with a texture. And if we have a look here, maybe let me close that. Let's go with Anisotropic. So there are some textures in here. So we're talking about this effect here. And yeah, we have some textures that you can use to create anisotropic behavior of surfaces. And I would first go with one of these options. Because I also find that an anisotropy can be hard to control. So let me just show you how I would set this up. I would just go to a new scene. wait, that was the wrong menu and wrong button. So let's just add a disk. And let's add a material. First of all, let's set this to Redshift. Renderer is Redshift, and now I'm going to add a new material and assign it. And I'm also going to add a light. Let's go with an area light maybe, and let's make it a little bit smaller here. Something like that, and let's have a look from here. So what's happening now when let me bring this back. What's happening now is that you can clearly see just the reflection of this light. So what I'm going to do is I want to bring up the material editor or node editor and just add this texture here. And I'm going to throw that into a bump. Simply double click and then type in bump. And I'm going to use the bump map node and just throw this into bump map and this one here into the bump map texture. And now let me just refresh this. We should already see something. Yeah, here we go. So of course, this is now way too much, but you can see that, yeah, something is happening here already. So there are a few things that we could tweak potentially. So first of all, let me try to, first I'm going to make this a raw image. Let me bring up the panel here. So the color space needs to be set to raw because this is a texture that is driving data. Whenever this happens, the color space needs to be set to raw. When you're working with a diffuse texture, for example, then this needs to be either auto or sRGB. And now we can play a little bit with the settings here. Let me just go down a little bit. Play with this. Let me also play with the roughness here. That's also helping sometimes. Well, in this case, you can see that we're not getting where we want to. So there are settings for an isotropy somewhere. Let me think about that. Was that in the other shader? That's the bad thing when we don't have Noseman on the stream, right? He usually knows these things right away. Let me see. Nope. Anisotropy. Here we go. So, yeah, but to be honest, I'm not. I never used anisotropy too much because I found it very hard to control. But yeah, what I usually would try, as I said, is using a texture either as a bump input or like really just using it in the diffuse, even in the diffuse color. All right.
I got another question about two-sided materials in Redshift. Like if you ever make a leaf and you want it to show up on two sides of like a plane, I guess, probably.
Yeah.
How do you do a two-sided material?
A two-sided material. So usually this works right away. So let's just go to the other side here. You can see that that everything is double-sided by default, right? So we're now on the back side of the geometry and now on the top side. But one thing that is quite cool if you need to work with a lot of sprites is what we call them in Redshift. Then let me bring back this object here and let's have a look at this material here again. Because what's happening here is that Laubwerk used the material node to create the full material, but there is no opacity applied here. So let me maybe go back to the LOD and just go to the full object and show this. So what you can see here when you come closer is that these are just planes, right? These are just planes. And yeah, the texture is way less in shape than the whole object, right? So there is an alpha in there, but the alpha has not been applied here using the material, but using the sprite node. And the sprite node is a great way to create these sorts of sprites where you have alpha and a lot of these planes behind each other. Then the sprite node is the much more efficient way compared to just using opacity. So this is a special case where we would set this up using a sprite node. And here you can see that there is the sprite, or that the input is going in here. And then a texture path is defined. And in this case, it has an alpha applied. And yeah, it's just using the alpha from that image.
Okay.
But you can also choose that from color intensity.
And we just got a clarifying comment here that he meant 2 colors or textures on the same polygon.
Okay, one on the front side and one on the back side.
I think so. Sorry,
right.
Anderson, that I messed
okay,
up your question.
That's a good question. That's a good question. And what you can do, let me just open up or create a new scene, and let's just go with the simplest way possible. And let's go to Redshift and yeah, maybe add a dome light. There we go. So let's add 2 materials. And one is going to be of a different color. So let's set this to green. And we're going to apply both of these to the plane. And one thing that you can add when you're not, or what you can do when you're not using Redshift, is you can set one of these side to front and the other one to back. If I remember correctly, here you can see in the viewport it works. I'm not, if I remember correctly, oh yeah, it also works with Redshift. So that's also.
Bhavana mentioned the ray switch node in Redshift. I'm not
Exactly, that's the other way. You can go in here, and there is a node called ray switch. And using the ray switch node, let me just add this to the color here. And let me delete this one and set this to both. Using the ray switch node, you can define the front and back. And let's just say we want to have one side in green and the other one in red. Okay, and now we just enable this. And now in theory, we should have a red bottom side. So this is the ray switch node. And the cool thing about that is when you use black and white, for example, you can also use that together with a blender. Yeah, a material blender. And then use one material on one side and another material on the back. Like one could be like a stone material, and on the other side it's a plastic, something like that, with completely different material properties. So the way you would set that up, maybe I should show this. Let me just switch this one here to white and the other one to black. There we go. So now we have a black and white node here, right? Or material. And if I want to use a material blender, this one, I can then, first of all, create a second material, again, with completely different properties. Let's just, in this case, for showing you this, just create another color. And then I throw this other shader into the material color and the ray switch into the blend color. So now it's blending between the two in theory. Let me see. Yeah, it's working. So here we have the gray material, right? We can also make this a darker gray, for example. And yeah, we can add textures and noises and whatnot. Let me just add a noise so that we can see it better. I'm just going to throw that into the color. And now we have noise here and just another color here. But you can set up these materials completely independent from each other, including bump maps and roughness maps and everything you need. And yeah, then just use the ray switch to create a mask for the front side and the back side.
That's awesome.
But of course, you can also do it the way that I showed first with the front and back side. The cool thing about the ray switch is that you could combine this with other shaders as well. So you could blend this, for example, with a mask or something. That would also work. So that when we have, let's say, a layer node here, layer, and we throw this into color 1, and then let's say we want a gradient or ramp here, and we're going to set this one, let me solo this, to be circular and make the interpolation of all nodes step. Then we can get a little circle here. And in theory, if we just multiply these with each other and throw this in here, let me go with multiply. Yeah, you can see that we now have a pink border here and a noise circle in the middle. And here on this side, we only have noise, right? Because it's multiply. All right. Do we have more questions?
Yeah, dude. Redshift standard materials, do they have material presets like Cinema 4D shaders?
Oh, you mean here? So, well, there. Let me quickly have a look. There are no presets here. Usually you would find presets here. Let me add a new material. What you can do is either you go in here and you have a look at materials, and all of these materials that are in here are Redshift materials, except for this category where it says standard and physical. But all the others are Redshift materials, and these are usually a great starting point because they are meant to be photorealistic, and if you set up the lighting correctly, they will just look really, really good. If you just want to adjust some default settings here, so well, maybe let me do this here in the Attributes Manager. Let's just say I want to set this to be green and then maybe also metallic. So now we have a green metal. Then we could go in here and save this as a preset, green metal. And I'm just going to save this to this scene's database, so it's only available in this scene. And I'm going to hit OK. And now I can just adjust it, but I can also always switch back from, oh yeah, I should have created a standard, but let me just create another preset here. Let's say something like this, and I save this as a preset. This is my, oh, is this blue or is this purple? I would say it's purple. And hit OK, and now I can switch between these two presets. So now you can see I have the green metal, and now I go to blurple, and I have this one.
That's cool. So that saves all of the like the whole material settings, or is it just like per node? Can you save
This
things
is creating a preset for this node, more or less.
for the node? Okay, so it's not like your entire material chain.
No.
Okay.
And you should be able to find these here in the asset browser under presets. So you can save these to one of your databases, for example, and then you will always have this preset when you bring the database over to another machine, for example. You can also set this to favorite. And one thing that I'm curious about now is when I add a new material. Am I still in Redshift? Yeah. Let me go Redshift standard. Okay, but let me see when I'm in here and creating a Redshift standard node, if it's gonna take this as the default. No, it's not. But oh, okay. That's a thing I have to write down maybe, so that I remember. Let me quickly check this here. Okay, so maybe let's unpreset this one.
Unpreset.
Yeah.
That's a new verb.
It is. Yeah, here the presets are there. Okay, so it's not accepting presets as a default or as default values then, but with the new material, this is still working, and now it should. Okay, it's just in the attributes manager, not in the node view. So it's saving the preset here for the use in the attributes manager. All right. Do we have more questions?
Yeah. So what's the easiest way to transform locations of objects from Cinema 4D to After Effects? Like they want to attach a callout that spins when a C4D cube spins, for example.
So the easiest way would be to use Cineware. So what you can do is let's just go with the example of the rotating cube. I'm just going to use this, and let me also just move it to the side and then set a keyframe here, then go to frame 90 and set a keyframe here as well. But we're also going to do some rotation, going to add some rotation. Here we go. Now we have an object that is animated. It's actually one of my best works. And then you can right-click here, and you go to, let me see, I'm just going to search for Cineware. It's under render text, Cineware. So here we go, render text, Cineware. And in here, what I need to do is to set everything up the way I want it. So the anchor point is something that is very interesting, because usually a null in After Effects has its anchor point in the top left. And here it is in the center. So I typically set this to top left, so just that it's in line with After Effects. And then there is another thing when you go to Edit and Project Settings. There is also a Cineware tab. And in here, you have to tick Save Polygon Cache and Animation Cache. And then it will bring over the position of this cube to After Effects. When I save this now, let me just save it. And where am I going to save it? Let me just add a new folder. This
I
is
don't think I was aware of the Cineware tag. I was always using the compositing tag or external compositing before that.
yes. The external compositing tag has been renamed to Cineware tag because Cineware is the technology behind it.
Okay.
So that's today is year 20 and the 22nd. What is the date? 22nd.
believe
Yeah,
so.
there we
Yeah.
go. All right, we're gonna create this, and this is our ATT scene. There we go. I'm gonna save this, and I'm gonna open up After Effects, and let's hope that it's now opening up faster than in the past, because sometimes on my machine it takes quite long to open After Effects. But in this
There you
case,
go.
we are lucky.
Boom.
Boom. Okay, new project. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the Finder, go to Schreibtisch. So Schreibtisch is the German word for desktop, just that you know.
Oh,
We are
nice.
learning a lot here.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me just go to ATT. There we go.
You've got a lot of
ATT.
schmutz on your Schreibtisch.
Absolutely. I actually do have a lot of Schmutz on my Schreibtisch. The funny thing is, when I talk in English, I even pronounce German words the English way. So what I'm just doing is I'm importing the scene here. And now let's just create a new comp with that Cinema 4D scene. There we go. And let's have a look. So here's our animation. And then I can extract the scene data. And if I do that, I get the camera and I get this cube here with the null. And now you can see that the null is also rotating together with the cube. That's the simplest way of bringing object transformations over to After Effects.
Yeah, I should also point out too that a lot of times motion graphics designers are using tags like align to spline, and a lot of times things that work in Cinema don't translate over through Cineware. So sometimes you have to bake the animation in the tag in order to have that work out right over in After
That's a great
Effects.
point
So
that you're bringing up, because I always used to have that problem. And the reason for that is that I was always using like a camera rig. So I have a camera rig that I created. Camera, I have it in here. Let me see. Usually it should be in my, let's go with a rig. Camera rig. That's something that I created. That's in my database. And here we have the camera rig that I created. So
sick.
what's happening here is that I have a dolly and it's pointing towards or to this object there. And then I have the camera pivot point set to something here in the middle, because back then when I created that rig, it was quite common that you don't rotate a camera around its nodal point, which is like somewhere here. So the 3D camera always has its nodal point like on the axis, more or less. So this is the nodal point of the 3D camera. And I just used this helper object to set it back a little bit, so that when I just rotate the camera, that I have a little bit of offset in the nodal points position, which feels more realistic. And yeah, so the thing about this rig is that this will never come over to After Effects. So the camera position, bringing the camera position over is was something that just didn't work. So what I did then is I just created a new camera, and I created a constraint from the rigging tags, constraint tag, And I was using the transform constraint. And this is a way to lock an object to the position of another object. And then I just use the Redshift camera in here. And now you can see that these two cameras are at the same location. Because of these expressions here, you have to be aware of or you need to be careful with the priorities. So in this case, it can be that this expression is being executed before all of these and all of these objects, and this would cause a frame lag. So what you can either do is just put this camera below here because the execution order is from top to bottom. Or if you want to be really sure, you select the constraint tag and go to basic, and there's a parameter called priority. And priority means, well, it's nothing more than defining the time within a frame, within the execution sequence to execute this expression. And I always want to have this being executed last. So I set the priority to 50. Whenever you go positive, it will be later in time. When you go negative, you will execute, or you will move the point in time like to an earlier place, if that makes sense. So minus is earlier, plus is later. And now I can just move around this camera, right? And my other camera that I can then export will always go with it. However, I need to make sure that the focal length and everything is in line, and I need to bake this camera. So let's just say I use this this object here, this helper object, and I'm gonna just animate the position from here to there. All right. Let's set another keyframe. Then I would also, let's bring up the timeline and select the camera. And I would go to functions and bake objects. And once you do that, you can define that you want to bake the expressions. And this is exactly what we need here. And then I want to include the position, scale, and rotation. That's everything that I need here to get everything that I need. And I press OK. And then, in theory, it should work. So now you see that we have a camera with keyframes on every frame, right? And if I let me just make the others invisible. Now you can see that this is exactly the same movement as I originally animated. And then you just save it again. And let's swap over to After Effects. So now I'm going to delete these two objects that I extracted. And I'm going to go back here. I think it's... is it working already? So let me extract this. Now we have all of these cameras in here. And this camera, let me just have a look at the parameters. Yeah, all the parameters are there. And we can now even have a look through that camera. It wouldn't make sense right now. Let me see here. Where was that? Where can I have a look through the camera? I'm not in the default workspace. What is the default workspace? Here we go. And let's use this camera here. It's not bringing this over to, or it's not live linked to the Cinema 4D scene. That's, but you can see that this null is moving. Yeah, maybe we need some 3D layer in here. So let me just create a new solid. and just make it a 3D layer. Here we go. Is it this one? No, that's
So it's on the right.
Here we go.
There you go.
So yeah, and now you can see that this solid is even moving. So let me, or it's not moving, but what happens is that it's that the camera is moving around the solid. So let me make this a little bit smaller. Oh, it's super big. However, you can see it here. So it's the correct movement of the camera. Not super great, but showing what the workflow is. So yeah, that's a quite interesting one, especially when you're working with camera rigs or with other rigs for whatever. Let's just say you have two characters in the scene and you want to hand over one object from one character to the other, and then in After Effects you want to add some sort of text to it. Then you could just use the parent constraint and then bake it, and then you have the position of the object that you can export to After Effects to use it for the text. All right.
That's awesome, man. Thank you. I'm not sure what time we were wrapping up, but we just got like a massive influx of tons of questions.
Okay, so let's go through these questions a little bit.
The next one is, can you create a spline from edge selection tag on a mesh? Procedurally, I mean, without a plugin. I'm not sure I understand.
Procedurally, no, procedurally is not possible.
Okay.
You can, so one thing you can do, but as I said, it's not going to be procedural. What you can do is you just create an object. Like, let me go with a sphere, make it editable by hitting C, and then just selecting a few edges here, and then you can go to mesh edge to spline, and then you will get the spline of exactly this this edge. But yeah, it's not procedural.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's static.
That's impressive. Okay, the next question is, how do you fold a plane in Cinema 4D as if you were going to make folded paper? Is there I don't know, other than just taking apart the polygons? I don't know if there's.
Yeah, so it really depends on the workflow. If you could elaborate, that would help, because there are many ways of doing that. The simplest one, of course, is by using a bend deformer, right? Well, let me just create a plane. Let me just add a bend deformer and just make it, maybe let me rotate it first, like so, right? Make it a child and just bend it like so. That's the easiest one. When you mean, or if you mean in modeling, then I would just make it editable. And let's say I want to, this is happening all the time with this mouse. So let me just select a few polygons here, or points here. And then one thing you can do is, when you want to rotate this, there are parameters for the modeling axis. So here you could just say, okay, I don't want to rotate around this point, right? But I want to rotate around a point here on this line. So what you can do then is, we are in Z direction here. I go -C, and then you can just do this. There is an even cooler way to do that. Because you can see the problem here is that I'm now restricted or limited to the dimensions of the bounding box of this selection. What if I want to rotate around this point, right? And the cool thing is that we have axis mode up here. So we can switch to axis mode. And then when I hover over one of these points or polygons or edges, these get a highlight. So what I can do is I can just click it now. Now this is the pivot point. I leave axis mode, and now I can rotate around this point. This is super nice because you can also use a shortcut. So if I hover over axis mode, then you can see that L is the shortcut. And in Cinema 4D, we have sticky keys. So if I just hit L, you can see this is enabled. And if I hit it again, then it's disabled again. But if I press L and keep it pressed, axis mode will be enabled as long as I keep the key pressed. And as soon as I release, you can see that it's not active anymore. So what I can do is I make my selection, I hold down L, keep it pressed, select this one, release the L key, and then I can rotate around this. Around this point. And this works with edges and polygons as well.
I didn't know that that worked with selections. That's really cool.
That's super great. That's something that I learned like 2 years ago, and I was super blown away. And that was one thing that I immediately added to my workflow.
That's incredible. Okay.
And I know it's from Noseman.
Oh, go ahead.
Noseman, you're missed here.
Yes. So next question, how do I map a shader field shader like tiles in an effector field? For example, a tiled pattern that controls a matrix cloner that clones on an object.
There are actually a few ways of doing that. I think the easiest one, let me think and let me try something. So I'm just gonna, let's use a torus this time. I'm gonna use the torus, and I want to add some clones here. Let's just add a matrix in this case. Matrices are just displayed here as cubes, but they are not real clones. Not a real clone. So here I go with object. I want to clone onto this torus, right? And I want way more clones. And now let's say we want to use, for example, a checkerboard pattern or something to control the size of these clones. So there is a shader field. So let me first add the plane effector. And using the plane effector, I want to affect the scale. And let me just go with absolute scale, uniform scale, and just maybe let's just bring this down to 0. Maybe minus 1. So then they are gone. Maybe let me go with a little less, 0.9, like so. So now we see them because they are very small. And now we could, in theory, use a shader field here. Where is it? There we go, shader field. And just add a shader, like a checkerboard shader. Let me go to surfaces and then checkerboard. There we go. And now we have this checkerboard here, but you cannot really see what's happening. And the other problem is that even with the mapping, you don't have as many controls as you would have in a material tag, right? So what you can do is you can use a material tag instead. So I'm going to clear this because here the channel by default says custom shader, but you can also set this to color, luminance, transparency, and so on of a material tag. So the important thing here is that this only works with standard materials. So let me just create a material and let's just add it to the torus. And we don't need to use that for rendering. We can then add a Redshift material on top of that, for example, and use Redshift as the renderer. That's absolutely no problem. But the thing is, we can use this material And let's say we want to use the color channel to set this checkerboard up. So let me go to checkerboard. Now you can see this is my checkerboard pattern. All right, and everything that is black will now be big. The clones will be big, and everything that is white here will have small clones on it. So the way you would do this, or set this up, is you go to the shader field, and then you just set this from custom shader to the channel that you were using, in this case color, and then it's asking for a material tag, and you just drag and drop the material tag in here, and suddenly you can see that this is working. And the great thing about this, at least if I'm not mistaken, let me double check this. If I now set up the mapping, for example, to, let's go with flat, and all the others, all the other mapping methods are just working. So now we could use, or we could go into texture mode and maybe rotate this, and you can see that all the clones, all the matrices are reacting. I can make this much bigger, and now we can really see what's happening. And this is the way how I would do it.
Cool. Next up, is there a way to reorder the vertex order of a mesh based on the proximity of a vertex of another object which has the same vertex count?
The vertex order. I don't think so. I don't think so, at least not with classic Cinema 4D functionality. It might be possible using scene nodes. But that's definitely a Noseman question. Yeah, in theory that's possible, but it's not an easy thing. I would love to learn more about the use case that you're after.
Yeah, see the same thing.
If you can elaborate on that, I would be happy.
The next thing is, can you show with MoGraph how to do a Y-Zipper animation?
A Y-Zipper animation. Well, I think last time or 2 times Noseman showed it. Noseman showed it in one of the other sessions.
Okay, so you can just search on our YouTube channel for that.
Yeah. So basically, let me think how he did it, because the problem is not the zipper itself. The challenge is to really make it to make it part of some cloth. But I also think that this would now be too long for the rest of the show.
I think I found it. I'll just put the link in the chat.
Oh, thank you, Chad.
Yeah, my pleasure. Whoop. Bam. There you go. And I think that's all for the questions.
Yes. So there's one more question that, do you know if Maxon work on the fluid simulation in Cinema 4D? These type of questions, you might expect that, but we are not here to answer any questions that are related on or to development. So that's something we won't talk about. You have to wait and see if something like that is being added. So
we'll let you know when it comes out, though.
Yes, absolutely.
If something happens, we will tell you here.
Absolutely. All right. So in that case, I think we can wrap up, right? So
think
let
so.
me quickly bring this up again, because I want to share a few links again for everyone who just came in late and didn't see the housekeeping part at the beginning of the show. So I'm here on the Maxon website, and if you go to news and events, you can find all the events, live streams, and so on that we are doing, where we are participating. And as you can see, there is a lot of stuff happening. So tomorrow we're gonna have VFX and Chill. That's definitely worth watching. We currently have a ZBrush and Substance Creative Workflows series on Mondays, our Demystifying Post-Production series. Also, next week, Ellie is going to do a live project down of this scene, which is going to be quite exciting. And yeah, more stuff to come. Maxon Color is next week on Thursday. We're going to have a special. That's something we can announce here. So we're going to try to collaborate on a project and just improvise and take your input to create something that is hopefully going to be beautiful in the end. At least I'm sure that everyone is going to learn something. Speaking of learning, whenever you go to the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel, and let me share that link. There we go. Whenever you go there, you can watch the recordings of the live streams that we are doing. So you can catch up here. There are also some other videos that you can watch. It's definitely super cool. And we just hit and passed the 40K subscriber mark. So thank you if you are a subscriber. And the next thing is Cineversity. That's our official learning platform. And here, if you're new to like any of our products, then you can just watch the Getting Started series for Cinema 4D, Redshift, Universe, ZBrush,
Mirror.
There's a lot. Oh, you're especially mentioning Mirror because I think Chad is the person behind the Mirror Getting Started. Yeah, look at this. I know that guy. I know that guy. He's on here, and he's always doing an excellent job creating tutorials. So I recommend you to watch this one. And I'm not just saying this because I want to be polite in a live. It's a fact. It's a fact.
Thanks, man.
All right, and then the last thing, did I share the Cineversity link?
Yes, you did.
Yes, I did. Okay, thank you. Thank you for the reminder. I'm getting old here.
No.
The last thing is that we want to give away a T-shirt. So you can order a T-shirt for free if you use the following link and passcode. So the way it works is you click that link or you enter that URL in your browser, and then you're asked to type in the coupon code. And once you did that, you are allowed to order one T-shirt for free, and you only have to pay for the shipping. All right, that's pretty much it. Let me just switch to the two of us. And I want to thank you for being on the show, Chad, and showing all of this cool real lens flare stuff. And
Pleasure,
also
man. Thanks for having me.
Care of the questions. Thank you for that. Also, we have Kyle in the background, and Kyle is producing the live stream here.
Woo,
and
go Kyle.
We also have a few more people in the background. One of them that I want to especially point out is Dr. Sassi, because Dr. Sassi is always creating the timestamps for all of the recordings, for all of the live streams. And thank you, Dr. Sassi.
Thank you, Dr. Sassi.
In advance. And yeah, I think that's it.
I think that's it.
We're good to go. All right, everyone. In this case, hopefully see you next week on our very special Ask the Trainer stream, where we are going to create something beautiful and collaborate on a project as a team. That's going to be exciting. All right. Cool. So bye, everyone.
Thanks for being such a great audience, everybody.
See you next week.
Take care.
Take care.